Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Dexter Resurrection Episode 2. It's called Camera Shy. This is a Patreon sponsor review, so thank you very much to Cindy for picking the show. Still catching up from being sick, and this was because this episode came out at the same time as the first episode. They both came out in the first week of the release. So this was an interesting pivot of an episode, because the big thing that I kept saying in the first one was that the Harrison plot was the more interesting, because there was progression there. You know, he built up and did this kill. He had there was like moral reasons why he stepped in and did this, but also using all of his dad's kind of teachings to try and help cover the crime scene and all that. And then the Dexter stuff is the stuff that I really didn't like, because it was the nostalgia stuff, it was the cameos, it was the, oh, someone suspects him and is sort of talking around it and they're not just quite saying what they feel, blah, 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 blah. And because of that, the Batista scene that we get in this episode is like probably my least favorite scene of the whole thing, because like I just don't care. I don't care about him investigating Dexter. Investigating Dexter is like the least interesting thing they could possibly do in this show. And that's just based on my time with the original series. But this one is a lot more Dexter focused. Harrison, gets a few scenes and obviously has a couple of bits that are important, but Dexter really takes focus, and so does a new serial killer that's in New York. The episode opens with someone getting into a raid share, and notably the driver says the person's name first, and the guy just says, "Yep, that's me," and gets in, and ultimately turns out to be a serial killer who is killing drivers in the city. Maybe specifically as well, they are hate crimes. The way he was talking, the way that he seems to target, not even just black men, but specifically like immigrant black men, like the driver in the opening scenes from Haiti. Later on, we meet another victim who had, and they all seem to have accents of some kind. They don't sound like they're just from New York. And he says something to the effect of, "Oh, you people came here," and blah, blah, blah. He gets all xenophobic. So there seems to be some like hate crime stuff kind of baked into why he's doing this, on top of just the actual usual murder, bloodlust, or whatever you want to call it. So the interesting thing about this opening scene is that when he gets into the car, he's got a hood up, and he's there, and he talks like a bunch of lines, and then things start getting a bit more menacing as he starts inching towards like he's losing his temper, but like building up to actually attacking and putting like a zip line around the driver's neck. Is that for a lot of this scene, I thought it was Dexter. Like, I thought it was Michael C. Hall sitting in the back seat, because he had a hood up, so he was kind of in shadow. He had, he's very similar kind of stubble on his chin. Sounded kind of similar. Now, the actor I actually recognized from other shows once I got a better look at him. His name is Mark Manchesa? I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. But I've seen him in other shows, for sure. So, once I saw his face properly, I'm like, oh, it's not Dexter, it's someone else. But the reason why I'm pointing this out so much that I really thought it was Dexter is because it actually ends up being brought up later, where there's like an eyewitness, like a survivor, who was almost killed. We meet a character later who, when he meets Dexter and Dexter's asking questions about the serial killer, he describes him and says, "Yeah, he's kind of a lot like you, actually. You don't have a hoodie, do you? Because you're a serial killer." And Dexter plays it off, and we know it's not actually him, of course. But I thought that was really interesting. That was intentional, that it was supposed to look like it was Dexter. Because I spent like a minute at the start of the episode wondering why he was doing this. Like last we left Dexter, he was watching his son at the hotel from across the street. Why is he doing this? Why is he stealing someone else's raid share? And then it became clear it wasn't him. But I thought it's actually like, dare I give a compliment to the show when I'm not that into it, but I do think it's actually kind of impressive how much they made it feel like it was Dexter, and then it just kind of naturally became not him because it wasn't. And then they actually bring it up later. Oh, he looks like you. It could have been you. And for like half that, it's pretty convincing when he says that, because for half that scene, I thought it was Dexter. And wondered why he was being all cagey and well, I mean, Dexter's always cagey, but like, cagey in like a different way. So, yeah, we have a serial killer, and Dexter catches wind of this pretty early on. He before he does though, he goes to the hotel, sneaks in, and has a whole kind of look around the crime scene. He talks a lot about how he's, it's tougher to get to the crime scenes now because he's not actually part of the police department. And he gets to the room and he's kind of like proud of his son because he can't find any blood. He can't find traces. And he realizes the plastic wrap that's in the shower curtain has been replaced recently, but not the curtain itself, implying that the plastic was used for something. And he's like, oh, he used the plastic for the body, and then he's changed it up, he's put it back, whatever. So I liked those details. I liked him kind of being excited at that. I thought that was, I think him being oddly proud of his son, especially when his ghost dad, who always talks to him, is kind of saying, "Is it such a good thing that he's taken after you?" I thought that was an okay bit. And then he has to hide because the Sherlock lady detective comes in and starts basically deducing a lot of the same things that Dexter deduced, and goes even further. She talks about how this place has been scrubbed so clean with the right kind of bleach that she wants to check the other hotel bathrooms to see if they're as clean. And not just to say it, because later on they confirm it. The idea being that the other rooms are cleaned with normal bleach, so there's still evidence of fluids and bodily fluids of various kinds under certain conditions, black lights, whatever. Whereas this room is completely clean, suggesting that someone who knows what they're doing, and Harrison's learned from Dexter what type of bleach to use, has specifically cleaned this because it's a crime scene. They've specifically cleaned away blood. She also notices that the top of the toilet is a slightly different white than the other. And now it looks the same to me on camera, but she's like, oh, she gets really specific and says, oh, that's like an egg Karamak something. That's like a, cream 2000 blah blah blah. I don't know color, fancy color names, but she gets ultra specific, like the sort of colors you'd read in like a brochure for decorating or something. She gets really specific. So Dexter hears all this, hears the potential investigation leads and pitfalls and whatnot, which is a little bit convenient that he's able to hear all this, admittedly, but because he sneaks around the hotel for a long time. He ends up sneaking in through the kitchen, and he sort of deduces that that's probably where the cutting up the body happened because of the metal surfaces, the blades, and so on. When he eventually gets in there with no one around later on that night, he catches that one drop of blood that's on the ceiling. Although he actually has to wait for the kitchen to close, so he finally gets something to eat. And he's apparently pretty hungry because he gets 2 cheeseburgers. And these are 2 proper restaurant cheeseburgers. Two tiny little cheeseburgers from a McDonald's is nothing. I can do that any day. But this is a proper big restaurant cheeseburger, and he has 2 of them. Honestly, him eating's a thing throughout the episode. We see him getting breakfast at one point. We see him eating food at the other driver's house. We see him eating cereal at one point. Dexter is ravenous. You get the feeling that he's not eaten much since he got out of the hospital or the rest home. So yeah, I'm sort of rushing through that a little bit because ultimately the main plot that he has for the rest of the episode, and something that his dad criticizes him for, is that he kind of puts the Harrison stuff on the back seat and kind of starts to focus on the serial killer, because when his truck that he was using has been towed when he gets out. And to be fair, I actually got a little laugh out of him saying that he can tell how someone was killed by a single drop of blood, but he can't make heads or tails of this street sign that's explaining the parking rules. And yeah, it looks really complicated, and I didn't understand. I don't drive, to be fair, but it did look like a lot of information with a lot of different exceptions and time rules and whatnot. And that gave me a little chuckle. So he has to get a ride share. But notably, this guy, who turns out to be named Blessing, asks Dexter to say his name rather than saying the name out, and Dexter says, I'm Dexter, and he's like, okay, you can get in. And this is, I'm just going to say it, Blessing is a blessing. He is the nicest man in New York City. He is very friendly, he's very pleasant, he tries to get to know Dexter. Dexter even opens up a little bit, obviously not giving all the truth, but talking about he's coming to New York to see his son, he's not sure if he's staying, so on and so on. And the driver, Blessing, eventually apologizes for being a little bit, skeptical when he first came up to him, because there's a serial killer in New York hunting drivers. And Dexter perks up, he gets all, he's wetting his lips, he's like, what? A serial killer, you say? And then the part that really gets him is when Blessing says they're calling him the Dark Passenger. I don't know, like I want to know. I want to know if the reason why this is the type of killer it is for this episode and next episode, because he's not got to him yet. It may even be like, I mean, I don't know how many episodes we're going to spend on this one killer. But I want to know if they came up with this entire idea of someone getting into the back of Ubers, faking the person who called them, and then killing the driver. Did they come up with all of this just so they could call him the Dark Passenger? Because it's obviously perfect for what the type of killer is. And obviously Dexter's immediately like, oh, I never trademarked that, this son of a bitch. And there's this constant throughout with him and his dad Harry, where he's like, oh, and like, there's only room for one dark passenger in New York City. So he kind of becomes a bit obsessed that it's like a chance for a kill and all the rest of it. And that's kind of what his goal is, to the point where Blessing actually invites him to like a little dinner party he's throwing the next day. You know, hey, you're moving to the city, you're thinking of maybe becoming, because when Dexter finds out about the killings, he actually says, oh, I might become a rideshare driver myself. I might do that. And obviously he wants to do it to lure in the killer potentially, but you know, the guy Blessing invites him to this little party, and Dexter's obviously reluctant at first, but ultimately agrees, because the survivor that Blessing tells him about, who got hurt in the ear escaping, he's going to be there. And Dexter's just like, oh, will he be here? Can I come and like ask him some questions, you know, for my own safety, to stay alive, since this guy's clearly, you know, sort of went through all of this on his own. So yeah, he's very nice. I mean, Blessing ends up renting out his basement apartment to Dexter, and when he shows it to him, there's like a plastic wrap over a table, and like Dexter, of course, like, it already looks like a kill room, and Dexter even says that in his narration. So like, yeah, Blessing is just this lovely man who is very nice and is just offering Dexter the world. And you know, and then Dexter, to be fair to him, is that, you know, like Dexter's not Dexter always seems to appreciate how nice he is, even if he's a little awkward about it. It's not like Dexter secretly plotting to kill the guy or anything, but he seems like a lovely man. Does Blessing. He is a blessing, like I said. So all this is setting up, and it's, you know, it's this idea of like, am I sticking around permanently? And Harry's like, yeah, you're sticking around because your son's here and your son needs your help. Blah 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 blah. So we get some investigation, and he looks into when he meets the driver that survived, and you know, I mentioned like him saying the killer looked like Dexter a little bit earlier, but he also has a video. His dash cam camera like has a recording of the attack. And we saw a glimpse of this at the start of the episode, but in the footage we see it looks like he's got a glowing white face, like, you know, it's just like bright and blown out. And this apparently is a trick. It's Blessing's daughter who comes up and says, "Oh, you must have like infrared lights pointed like inside the hoodie or something, because it's like, you know, it doesn't show up to the human eye, but in a camera it'll just blow out the image." So he's basically got this really almost supernatural kind of look to him on camera. But there's a logo on his bag. Dexter kind of starts investigating this company that's about cybersecurity, and kind of like notices that one of the staff doesn't have a photograph on the website, and starts to kind of hang around, sort of track who each of the other people are. And then ultimately, by the end of the episode, he does find the killer. We know it's the killer because we've seen him before, and he sort of says, hey, that guy's not got a photo on the thing. And I guess the big dramatic point for the end of the Dexter story in this episode is that he chooses to intervene. Even though he's just doing recon, Harry says to him, hey, you're still physically too weak to actually take someone down. And he's like, I know, I'm just doing the recon, I'm getting to know who he is. But when he takes a sly photograph of him on his camera, he sees that the infrared thing's on, and he's like, oh, he's in kill mode, and he's going over to a rideshare. And the driver says, hey, are you John? And he's like, yep, I'm John. And Dexter, just thinking on his feet, walks up and says, hey, buddy, don't take my rideshare. And the killer just kind of awkwardly like backs away, realizing that he has to kind of, you know, he doesn't want to cause a scene, doesn't want to have eyes on him, so he just kind of like says sorry and walks away. And Dexter tries to follow him, but ultimately loses him when he gets to the train. Harry does point out here that this is new for Dexter, that Dexter, like, intervene to save someone, regardless of how much it might have ruined his investigation or his, like, his research before the kill. Because I actually thought at this moment as well, as soon as when Dexter goes up and does this and just basically figures out a way to save this driver's life, who's going to be next, is that I did think, oh, you've just made your job harder, because now the killer has seen your face up close and will notice you if you come near him again, right? He's made the job more difficult on himself to save this guy, and it does feel like a slightly heroic moment for him, and I think that's, like I appreciate them trying to sort of add an extra dimension. Now, is this genuinely the first time he's done something like that? I don't remember well enough from the original show. And I definitely didn't watch all of New Blood, so, I mean, I'll take their word for it, I guess, is what I'm saying. But I think it's a decent enough little heroic moment. What I will say, though, two things to critique in the Dexter plot here. One is the way it ends at the very end of the episode, where he just kind of, like, straight up looks at the camera and says, "Oh, imposter, dark passenger, my kill table is ready for you," and he looks right at the camera and, like, the music kicks in. I thought that was kind of lame. I thought they didn't know what moment to end the episode on, it felt like, and they tried to just kind of fabricate like a sort of a call to action, like an exciting, not cliffhanger, but like an exciting, like, statement of intent, and it felt a little bit too try hard and felt a bit cheesy. The other thing, though, and this is maybe more of an overall critique. Now, I get what they're doing here, because Harry does complain about it and says, hey, you're kind of, like, getting sidetracked from Harrison. But I do feel that the show in general, though, not just Dexter shifting his focus to this serial killer because he's got the itch to go get another killer, but it does feel like the show's focus itself shifts so much to Dexter this episode, and most of it to this new killer that he's hunting. It does feel a little bit strange to me, because it feels like the Harrison stuff, I mean, and it's okay that, that's more of the B plot this episode. They can alternate potentially. But I do kind of worry that because Dexter's kind of back on his feet and he's got serial killers to hunt now, that they're going to just, like, stick to trying to, like, do the old formula of him hunting killers for most of it, and then all the new stuff will just kind of run in as a B plot each episode. Just because it feels like, commit to doing the things that are making this unique or different, right? You commit to, like, actually having him with his son, but instead he just kind of, stays hidden, walks away. Harrison does kind of get a brief glimpse at one point, but it's after he's just had a nightmare about him, so it kind of plays like he's thinking he just saw something, like in the corner of his eye, like he's hallucinating, and he ends up going off with a friend to do a bunch of drugs or whatever. So he's not doing great as Harrison. The Harrison plot is, like it's mostly just kind of following up. We talked about the stuff with Dexter listening to the detective. The detective looks at the security footage and is annoyed that there's not a lot of cameras in the hotel. It's only in the public kind of parts for guest privacy sake, according to the manager. But they do see the woman at the bar who gets very, very intoxicated after one drink, so they know it's Rohypnol, and they're like, we need to talk to her. And the manager's like, yeah, she was here for some conference. So at the end of the Harrison plot is her coming in with the police, and they notice Harrison looking at her and kind of being a bit attentive. So the end of his subplot is him being asked by the manager to go speak to the police. So they leave you in a little bit of a cliffhanger. Obviously, the thing I skipped over there from the first chunk of his story is him helping his friend who, there is maybe a will they won't they thing. He looks after her kid when she's got a test or is studying for a test. And she's very appreciative and asks him out for a drink the next day, which he seems quite happy about. But that's pretty much it. Like, there's not like a ton to sink your teeth into. I actually, one of the more kind of like parts was probably when he did have that nightmare of Dexter yelling at him while he was lying there dying. And part of it is because there was a really awkward, like, or not awkward, but like over the top transition where it went from like the drip of blood that Dexter took off the ceiling of the kitchen, and it kind of like it starts to absorb and get darker, and then the camera pulls out and it's the blood on Dexter when he was like lying in the snow at the end of the previous show, and Harrison running over and he's yelling a bunch. you know, it just again, it fell a bit over the top, that part, for me. And I'm still like, I'm not. It's so weird to me. Like, I don't know how to take the super genius detective yet. It feels a little bit hokey, to the extent of like how straight and like serious she's playing it is. But at the same time, I have to admit Dexter's pretty pulpy as a property. So I mean, I don't even know if it's out of place necessarily, but worth mentioning. There is a scene with Batista where he's talking to the local cop from where, you know, the town that Dexter was in before, and basically just says, "Hey, can you put out a, like, not an APB necessarily, but just like a flag for the vehicle that Dexter left in." So maybe that'll lead to Batista coming to New York. But you know, again, it was just listening to Batista say he was worried about him, but you know that's not what he actually means. You know that he's trying to investigate Dexter because he thinks he's the Bay Harbor Butcher now. And I just like I'm just tired of people investigating Dexter. It was a well they went back to so many times on the original show that, yeah, the first time it was kind of exciting. It was kind of what made season 2, like, the parts of it that were all right, interesting, was the idea of like, oh, they're looking for him, and that's kind of a big deal. So there's that. And then Uma Thurman's character has another. So last time she put a letter in the trophy box of a serial killer. This time she shows up and basically tells another serial killer that he's been cut out of whatever their organization is. Like, she works for someone, and whoever she works with, this boss, like, I don't even know exactly how to define this yet, but it seems like someone who funds serial killers. And I don't know if they maybe target people for the boss. That, you know, it's like, hey, you want to kill someone? Kill this person because you know, the someone's paid us to have them whacked or something. I don't know. But the guy's like really stressed out and is wondering why there's no money in his account. And Uma basically tells him that, you know, they're done. Never talk about us again. Never contact us. You're cut off. You're not a part of this anymore. Whatever this is. Again, it's hard to imagine what this organization is that works with a bunch of independent serial killers, but that's what they seem to be doing here. And when the guy, like, he doesn't even like attack her, he just kind of like puts his hand on her shoulder and tries to stop her from leaving, and she just turns around because she's holding one of his like his prized weapon that she got out of his attic, which is a spiked baseball bat, and she hits him in the head. And, you know, so it cuts away implying that she's killed this guy just on the spot. Like, he had a chance to just go away and try and like start over somewhere new, and he got killed. So it sets up that she is willing to kill people, that she is quite dangerous, and it sets up this weird, wacky organization that seems to work with serial killers. I mean, we'll see where they go with that. It's a really big concept, and as of right now, it doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on in the rest of the plots. I mean, maybe this dark passenger killer will turn out that he's worked with these people or been in contact with them, and the plots will start to converge or something. But this feels like a huge like concept that they're kind of putting in here. So I'm really curious as to how big this is going to get, and if it's going to be silly, because right now it feels kind of silly. Like, it feels like a silly idea at face value, but we'll see. So as far as like how I feel about this episode as a whole, like, I think on the one hand, like, you know, like, when Dexter was good, it was because he was investigating serial killers. And at least here, the character of Blessing's such a nice guy that it is kind of nice enough, like, getting to know him and him being nice to Dexter. That's all right. Dexter has that one little heroic moment towards the end where he kind of jeopardizes his case by saving someone, and that's kind of a good little character beat. But it does kind of feel weird just how sidetracked the main plot from before is now. Like, it feels a little bit weird to completely sidetrack that and go on to just Dexter hunting a killer again. So, you know, like, I think there's pros and cons to that decision overall. And I don't think, like, you know, the Harrison scenes are fine. I don't think any of them in this episode are particularly great. The most interesting thing really about Harrison this episode is the scene with Dexter where he's like kind of like deducing all the things that Harrison did and being kind of proud about it. Like, that's kind of the most interesting he gets in this episode. And it's a little bit of a shame because in the first episode he had that build up and it was like, oh, he's doing this for this reason. I get, you know, and it is interesting because when they realized that the person he killed was someone who was trying to assault a woman and not a murderer, like they kind of like, you know, Dexter and his dead dad are like, hey, it's maybe he's building his own code. Maybe he's going to go after this type of person because this is what he sees as the worst in someone as opposed to a killer. But so, you know, maybe that'll lead to some interesting stuff. Maybe he'll pick some more targets that are doing that kind of thing. I just don't want anything bad to happen to Blessing. Okay, Blessing is such a nice man. He's delightful. His friend that survived is delightful. Actually, he seems like a very happy man. He's very cheery despite what happened to him. You know, he mentions that he didn't report what happened to the police because his visa's expired, so he's kind of keeping it on the down low. Which Dexter loves hearing because Dexter's like, oh, that means he's all mine. The police aren't getting close to him. So, yeah. So, in some ways, it was better than episode 1 because it wasn't as much nostalgia crap. Okay, so I think overall it's better. But I think the build of what Harrison was doing and him being driven to do what he did last episode was probably a little bit more unique feeling for the show, whereas this feels like it's kind of going back into just sort of typical Dexter autopilot in some ways, even though most of the characters he's interacting with are new, which is nice. You know, like, I mean, he can't interact with most of the characters from the police station because a lot of them died, but, you know, that's fine. So, there you go. That's my thoughts on episode 2. I'll be back with episode 3 soon. It'll be this week. I'm trying to, you know, get caught up, because I owe all these episodes as part of a Patreon thing. So, thank you very much for joining me. You can let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Helps out a bunch if you do it. And of course, if you're enjoying the shows and you enjoy the reviews, check out MailFuzz Movies for all the movie podcasts. And you can help keep all of it coming by going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get a bunch of bonus stuff. Or you can become a YouTube member. I recommend Patreon, though, just because you get all the movie bonus stuff as well. But any support is greatly appreciated. Thanks to everyone who already does. Thank you for joining me. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?